Hey everybody, this is Loki Jen coming to you again with another DIY. The next few videos are going to be on edibles. I've been getting a lot of responses from people who are really excited about edibles. Edibles are great. They don't leave the smell of smoke in the air. It doesn't get in your clothes. It comes on a little subtle and stays longer. And it has a little more, I would say, a little more potency in the long run. This first video is going to show you how to make brownies. Yes, the infamous magic brownies. We're going to use some things that are perfectly healthy by themselves, and we're going to medicate them, and I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing we need to get are a few supplies. So let's go over to my pantry and see what we got. Alright everybody, as you can see, nothing fancy. I got a package of the instant fudge brownie mix, which requires 1 egg and 3/4 of a cup of cooking oil. In this case, I'm going to use olive oil. And the reason why I like to use olive oil is because it's healthy for you. It tastes good. I like to use the lighter olive oil. That way I can saturate it a little bit more with my cannabis, and I can actually see the color change in it. The other thing that I love about olive oil is for any of you out there that love olives and olive oil and wine and stuff like that, you know, you can get a variety of different types of olive oils and even medicate them lightly so that you don't overpower the flavor of the olive oil. You know, and just have a glass of wine and dip some bread or whatever and have a good night. It's also great for your skin. Once it's medicated, it actually will have nice CBD oils in it with the olive oil to help your skin stay beautiful, just like all of them lovely people in the Mediterranean. So we got that there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the cannabis to be infused into the olive oil. And what this is going to entail is we're going to take my trusty old crock pot here. It's been through the washer, it's out of the machine itself. And I'm going to put my plant material in there, and then I'm going to submerge it with the olive oil. I'm going to go ahead and just use it with the plant material and the olive oil, simply because it is an oil and you're not going to leach out as much of the green chlorophyll as you would with the last DIY with the ISO extraction that I showed you guys. So you can get it fairly clean. There will be some color change to it. You know, obviously the alkaloids that we're getting are going to add a little color to it, and it will leach a little bit of the chlorophyll. But not to worry, because it'll still be just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to oversaturate this as much as possible. Now, I know a lot of you out there may not have access to a fair amount of cannabis at any given time. What I would always suggest is with what little bit of cannabis you have, maybe it'll only fit into a little mason jar or something. When you go to put the oil in there, just barely cover it, just barely get over the herb so that it's just below the surface, and apply a low heat to it and let it sit for a few hours. The reason for this is that what you'll hopefully do is oversaturate that oil so that it has the most alkaloid content that it can carry in solution. And then you can always go back and reapply again to that herb to make sure that you've got everything out of it. But I'm going to go ahead and use this whole 16.9 fluid ounces, and we're going to do the same process, only I'm going to give it a little bit more space, because I'm gonna try and saturate this as much as possible on a scale that everyone can see it. So we have our supplies. It's just a matter of getting our baking pans and preheating our ovens. Another tip for those of you when you get ready to grease your pans for your cake, your brownies, or your cookies, use your cannabis butter. There's nothing wrong with that. Every little bit helps. So, I'm excited. I don't know about you guys. I'm excited. So let's get on to this thing. All right. All right, everybody. We have our cannabis here. What I'm using is 4 ounces of trim. I'm trying to pull out as many of these stems as I can. It's not really going to affect the oil at all. In fact, it might even add some content to it, a little extra alkaloid, but I found that during the straining process, it can puncture if you're using filter paper or a fine mesh screen, it can puncture it and makes things a mess. If you do any canning of any type, the little canning strainer bags that they have, the little cotton ones, you can leave the stems in that and allow it to just pour through. I love those things because you can put the little stand right over another container and just let it kind of naturally go through, which is what you want to do. So I put roughly 4 ounces of trim in there, some little buds and whatnot, stuff that normally would just probably end up either in a joint or brownies anyway. So let's get a good look. As you can see, we are using trim. There's a few little buds in there, a couple little ones, some purple and some Humboldt. This is basically just everything I had left over. So we're going to go ahead and crack the seal on our pure olive oil. We didn't get the darker stuff. I deliberately chose to get the lighter stuff so we can see. And you'll see what I mean by adding just enough oil to saturate it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and empty this whole bottle. Now I'm going to save the bottle so that I can put the oil back into it. That way I don't get confused, but make sure you mark it. I usually put a little piece of black tape on it, or I write on it that it's, you know, medicated. And definitely keep it out of reach of your regular stuff. I don't know, on occasion sometimes family comes over and they want to cook something and they, without thinking, they grab my cannabis oil and you know, they get a little upset. But if they find out too late, they usually get over it. If they find out ahead of time, they're usually happy that you caught it. So I'm going to go ahead and just mash this down to take up any space in between the plant material. Now as you can see, I don't have that much oil in there. In fact, you can't even see it break the top until I push down. I don't know, let me get in close here. As you can see here, it's just saturated, and that's what we want. We want this baby to be saturated. What's going to happen is as we heat it, the plant material is going to break down and it's going to kind of settle down a little bit, and the oil, you'll start to see a little more oil towards the top. But this is what I mean by just barely saturating it. Now it's not going to pull every bit of the alkaloid out, it's not going to pull out every bit of the cannabinoids, but this oil that we do pull out is going to be highly saturated. So now that we have our cannabis and our virgin olive oil together in a container, it's a time to apply a little bit of heat. So I'm going to put this into the crock pot on low, and we'll come back and check on it in a couple of hours. So let's see what we get. Alright everybody, the oil and cannabis has been on heat for about an hour or so. I wanted to show you this. Now if you remember earlier, there wasn't this layer of oil on top, it was just saturated. And as I had mentioned earlier, as you heat it up, the plant material is going to soften and break down, and you'll get that layer of oil. This way we know we can oversaturate it and get enough of the medicine into the cooking oil. This is far from ready. We got another couple of hours to go. I figured I'd just show you guys that, and you know, you can see that it's not all that difficult to accomplish. Pretty simple, just takes a little bit of patience. So we're going to come back to this when she's ready to be filtered. Alright everybody, it's been about 4 hours. As you can see, that thing's still hot. I have transferred all of the plant material and as much of the oil as I could into this little strainer, which will allow me to get most of the oil completely out. As you can see, it's still dripping. I'm using a potato masher to just kind of lightly press against it to get some more oil out. Now, if you don't make a mess like I just did, you can see here, as I get in close, that the color of the olive oil has changed a darker green. Like I said, it was going to do that. But it's not going to be that much of an issue when it comes to cooking, because we're going to strain out most of the plant material. And the reason for that is not just taste, but a lot of people get some gastric distress from the plant material. This is a very strong fiber, so it can definitely mess with your GI, as well as your bowel movements and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do, if I can keep it from falling apart, is I'm going to go ahead and leave this here and let this sort of just drip off, drain off on its own. We're not in a rush at this point. We want to let this cool down. So I'm going to let it just keep going. As you can see, it's still dropping little riblets. I can see it from the angle here. It's pretty consistent. I'm sure if you look down in the pot there, you'll see that movement of light. That's the oil still dripping in there. So I'm going to do that and allow the plant material to cool down. And while I do that, I'm going to find an old t-shirt that I no longer use, that's been washed, cleaned, and I even went over it with a lint brush. And the reason for that is we're going to transfer the rest of this plant material, once it's cooled down enough, into that shirt and squeeze out as much of the oil as we can. If you have a press, if you're the type of person who has a press for apple juice, cider, you make wine, those work great. If you can rig up something with a little vise, that would help tremendously. But for those of us who don't have it, we go through the longer process, which is fine by me. I have all day. So we're going to just let it sit and do its thing, and when the plant material is cool enough to be transferred, we're going to transfer it into a nice clean t-shirt and strain it out. Now normally I wouldn't need to use a t-shirt. I have, like I said, a canning strainer which will work just fine. Unfortunately, this is a lot of plant material for that particular strainer, and a lot of people out there may not have access to it. Maybe you don't have the extra money to go spend on the materials. So a lot of people have old t-shirts lying around. A good wash, good cleaning, a little hit with the lint brush, and it should work just fine in pressing out the rest of that material. Once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and filter the oil that we have collected one more time, because plant particulates are going to make it through these strains, the strainer, and it's also going to make it through the t-shirt as you're squeezing it. But I'm going to run it through a nice fine paperless coffee filter. In fact, I believe I have it right here. These are relatively inexpensive. I got this at my grocery store for $2. Actually, it was $3, $2.99. If you don't have this, like I said, you could use a coffee filter. It will take a very long time for the oil to get through it, but you can do that if you want to get all the plant material out. If not, you know, the plant material, like I said, that's going to be in the bottom is going to be negligible. But if you really are just adamant about getting all that plant material out, you can go down to your local hardware store, paint supply store, and ask them for a fine mesh strainer bag. And if they ask you what you're using it for, you tell them it's for lacquer work. Now the reason why I say lacquer work is the micrometer on the strainer bag is much finer than that of a regular strainer bag for oil or epoxy, because all that's trying to do is catch the larger chunks. Those that have worked in any kind of construction or have used lacquer, you know that it's pretty volatile, and it comes off, you know, it can dry in the air while being sprayed on and turn into a lacquer dust. So the strainer bag is much finer for the lacquer strainer bags, and you can use that. And I wouldn't squeeze it, I would just run through the liquid you've collected and take out those finer particulates. You can also utilize your bubble bags or isolator bags, as I prefer Miele's isolator bags myself, just because the bubble bags, there's so many of them, so many different types, it just seems rather cumbersome to go past 4, but that's just me. Other people enjoy having up to 12 bags. So we're not talking about that, we're talking about cooking oil. So let's let this thing sit and cool down. I'll go grab that t-shirt and we'll move on to the next part. Alright everybody, I am back. I have my t-shirt. We have the cannabis, which is still kind of dripping a little bit of oil in there, but more importantly, the plant material is now cool enough to actually handle. So what I like to do is I like to take my nice clean white t-shirt and do what most boys do, make a mess. So I put it over the top like that just to help me out, and I use one end to hold, and my hand over here I use the strainer to hold this end, and I pop it in like that. As you can see, if you don't hold the sides, it'll drop into your oil, and this cotton material will actually absorb some of your cooking oil back, and that would just be tragedy after all this time that we've been playing around with this thing and trying to get it to where we can actually use it. So as you can see, there's not much oil left in it, but I'm going to start twisting and let's just see if we can get any more out. Look at that, nothing. Oh, here we go, couple riblets. Yeah, now this is definitely trying to get your money's worth out of it for sure. So I'm gonna say that that is good enough. Look at that. What am I gonna do with that? Well, seeing how it's olive oil, I'm gonna rub it into my skin. I should be alright. Alright, so what I've done is I've strained our material, and as you can see, we got the oil there, and there is some plant material in it, but not a lot. So I set up my funnel, cleaned right out of the dishwasher, and we're just going to use this. Forget the paper, we're dealing with oil here. And that's going to go in right on top. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try not to make a mess as I carefully pour this through the strainer back into the bottle to see what exactly we captured. Now this might take a minute or two to get everything out of the pot. That's what I love these for. And we will just go around the edges here and just sort of squeegee up the oil, because this This is no longer just regular old olive oil, cooking oil. This is medication now. So right through the strainer, we'll get it all in there as much as we can. And we'll let that strain through. And we got as much as we could out of there. I think we did all right. So I'm going to go ahead and set that off to the side and sort of hold this as it strains through. As you can see in the bottle, it's coming through relatively quickly. And if you look up here in the strainer, you can see the plant particulates are actually being captured and left behind. So this is a good thing. So we're going to go ahead and set that in there and continue to let this bottle fill back up. And we'll see what we get when we're done. Okay, so we're at the last little bits. There's just some oil that's collecting on the side of the funnel and dripping in. As you can see here, our strainer actually caught quite a bit of plant material that made it through the metal strainer. Now this little tiny bit really isn't going to affect you if you can't strain this, if you can't get to this point. Using the t-shirt alone won't give you this much. I mean, you could filter the whole thing through the t-shirt. It can be messy and cumbersome. I say just let it sit, and most of the heavy stuff will settle to the bottom and the lighter plant particulates will float to the top. And if you're really concerned, just put it in a bowl and then skim off the plant material and then decant the rest. But for all intents and purposes and what we're doing, we don't exactly need to do that. We've got it filtered as well as we can, as well as we need it. And as I come down here to the bottle, you've noticed that it has taken on quite a different color. When we first looked at it, it was yellow, clear, almost like a peanut oil. We've lost about, I'd say almost half, maybe thereabouts, a little less than half of the oil. And the reason for that is it's not a bad thing. It's not trapped in your plant material. Very little is trapped in the plant material after squeezing. The thing is with olive oil, it's a light oil. If you've ever cooked with it, you can't cook with it on super high heat because it'll just burn off and evaporate. And so, several hours at 225 degrees or whatever my crock pot was, you're going to lose a little bit. And of course, there is some that gets lost in the plant material and in the filtration system, but we're not too worried about that. The majority of what is missing has evaporated off, which is good for us because that means what's left is very concentrated. So when we use 3/4 of a cup to make our little brownies, it should be quite potent. So we're going to go ahead and let this go ahead and finish dripping on in there. We want to collect every bit of it. Like I said, there's quite a bit of the oil that is still around the rim of the funnel. And a little time and gravity will take care of that. And then we'll get on to the next step. I think right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to preheat my oven so that we can just rock right into it when it's ready to go. Alright, so let's just let gravity do its thing and we'll check on it in an hour. Alright, now that we have strained, filtered, and recollected our oil, it's time to cook with it. I actually let my funnel sit all night long. That way I could get every last bit of that medication that might have been sticking to the side. But enough with that. We can always rewind and check that again. What we're looking at here is your basic store brand instant fudge brownie mix, which we're going to need 3/4 of a cup of vegetable oil. We're going to use our cannabis oil. We need 2 tablespoons of water. I think I can manage that. And 1 egg. So, with that said, let's get cooking. Alright, so I've already gone ahead and emptied the contents into a nice little mixing bowl there. I have my trusty spatula. I've got a whisk. I have got an egg. I've got a nice little brownie dish. I like to, you know, go with the round instead of the traditional square one because I'm awkward like that. We've got our medicated oil and we've got a measuring cup, and as you notice on this one, it'll actually show you 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4 of a cup. But I'll tell you guys a little secret that I use. Instead of just 3/4, I go ahead and use a full cup of oil. It makes the brownies a little bit moister, and it adds quite a bit more medication to your product. So let's go ahead and start combining these things together. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and just make a little spot here in the middle for my egg to go into, because I'm special like that. And I'm also move this camera sort of out of the way so that you guys can see me working without me breaking the camera by knocking it over. So we're going to take our egg and bam, pop that sucker right in there, full egg. And let's go ahead and toss this baby to be put in the compost out in the garden. For those of you gardeners out there, anybody who's ever raised roses or anything, you know just how wonderful eggshells can be. So I got a little eggshell right there. I'll pull that out. I'm going to go ahead and break up this yolk, and while I'm doing that, I'm going to kind of blend these together as best I can. It's going to get real thick, in which case I'm going to grab my spatula and start folding it. But for now, let's just get that in there and get it mixed up, because we still got to add our oil. So, like I said, instead of going to the 3/4 mark, I'm going to fill this bad boy all the way up to the top. So let's go ahead and do that. I went ahead and reinserted the pour filter. You can do what you like. I kind of like it. Makes things a lot easier. Look at the color of that oil. It looks like extra virgin olive oil, and it looks like I'm pretty much going to use this whole thing up. You want to talk about potent. These are definitely going to be potent. Alright, so after a couple of minutes with the whisk, folding it over, we've got our brownie mix pretty much ready to go. I went ahead and used a little bit of the cannabis oil to grease my brownie pan, and I'm going to transfer this all in there, all contents. Now, don't forget to preheat your oven to 350 degrees before you start this mixing process. That way, after this is mixed and set for a little bit, it should be ready to pop right into the oven. And in about 28 to 30 minutes, depending on where you're at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, or close to, I don't know, for close to about 30 minutes or so, I guess. As it says on the bag, we did put a little extra of the oil in there, so expect a little bit longer cook time. So what we're going to do is we're going to let that oven preheat. We're going to let everything sit for a little bit. That way it has time to actually break up a little further if needed. And we can get ourselves a nice batter. So, there is our brownie mix. And as you can see, we used quite a bit of the oil. These should be exceptionally potent. So, that beeping sound Hey, alright, that means that our oven is preheated. Let's take this bad boy over there. 350 degrees, going right into the oven here. And I'm going to go ahead and set the timer and be back here in 25 minutes. Well folks, that beeping sounds means that it's been 25 minutes. Let's take a look and see what we got going on in here. Alright. Put on my trusty little oven mitt. Oh wow, look at that. Let me see if I can get in here nice and close for you guys. That is looking beautiful. And like I said, we added that little bit of extra oil, so it's going to take a little bit longer. So we're going to go ahead and pop this back in there for another 10 minutes. Actually, I'll check it in 5. So we'll go ahead and set the timer for 5 minutes, and we'll check it every 5 minutes after that. Well folks, there you have it. As you can see, there's still some little holes from the extra oil still kind of bubbling through. As it cools, it'll actually get absorbed into the brownie mix itself, and then we can put our little glaze over the top and it'll give you that distinct brownie look. But there's your step-by-step on how to. I'm making one of the more popular and one of the oldest forms of edibles, the cannabis brownie. So this is Loki Jen from Casa Del Loki, bringing you another DIY. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thumbs up for those of you who love brownies, and check me out. I'm going to be on Hangout, Google Plus, have a page there. We even have a community called Canology under Cannabis Talks. So this following week I am going to be in the hospital. So probably by the time these things are uploaded, I'll probably be in the hospital itself, and I'll be having my caretaker, who's my father, uploading these for me. Ideally, it's something he can do. So, with that said, hope you guys enjoy the recipe. If you have a recipe of your own, or a technique of your own, or another way to refine the oil so that it's a little better, please leave a video response. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching. Please check out my channel and subscribe.